in part of his writing, William James talks about the relationship between bodily feelings, like kind of interoceptive experience, and emotions. And he invites us to imagine what it would be like to experience anger, and then to have all of the bodily symptoms of anger removed one by one. So increased heart rate, kind of flushing, rush of blood to the face perhaps, which causes flushing. That whole kind of adrenaline response, all the symptoms of that taken away one by one, and invites us to imagine, would it be possible to experience the emotion of anger without all those bodily reactions? And he says, I think quite rightly, that doesn't make any sense. That in any meaningful, that the meaning of anger itself as an emotional state is the kind of summation of those bodily responses. This is something that Antonio Damasio talks about also, I think, in The Feeling of What Happens. He again says that ways it's a lot more eloquent than I can use a sentence together today. But again, he says that the kind of way of being, the kind of feeling of being that accompanies our day-to-day lives, is again the result of the not exactly the aggregate, but the totality of those bodily feelings, a kind of an emotional shape put together by the inputs from all these emotional states. These bodily states. And I'm just thinking about a couple of things in relation to that. I mean, just to clarify for myself what I think that Damasio is saying, is that I think he's saying that, even when we don't feel ourselves to be in the grip of any kind of great emotional state, like for myself right now, for example, I'm not angry, I'm not overcome by lust or love or joy or hatred. I'm not frightened, consciously frightened. So there's no great emotional storm sweeping through my somatosensory system right now. But Damasio would say, nevertheless, this feeling that I have of being right now, which is so routine, so regular, so default, if you like, in my state, that default state itself is a product still of all those somatosensory actions and reactions and responses. So they feel like the biochemistry, the electrochemistry, the kind of sensory, the interoceptive sensory information that is being processed on a moment-to-moment basis is giving me the feeling of this routine feeling of being that I'm having right now. What I was just thinking about, though, was what would it be like if these senses are removed one by one? And given that we kind of have two sets of senses, the interoceptive senses, the ones that Damasio and James talk about, the internal, the senses that give you information about your internal milieu, heart rate, all the biochemical stuff I've mentioned, breathing rate, the kind of adrenaline stuff that I mentioned, the interoceptive senses, and then the exteroceptive senses, which are the ones that are usually referred to as senses of sight, hearing, touch, taste, olfaction, and I guess proprioception, which I'm not quite sure where that fits in terms of intro or extro, perhaps on the borders, who knows. Anyway, if those are removed one by one, what happens to that sense, that feeling of being? I suppose if we started with the exteroceptive senses, and you're lost, the one that projects furthest from the body, which expresses one's sensory being to the greatest distance, which is your sight. I guess that would be the first to go in terms of losing them from a distance, and then hearing, and then olfaction, which operates at a closer distance, or feels as if it does. and then touch, and then taste. So those things would go. I'm not quite sure what that would feel like, but I'm guessing it would feel like a kind of retreat, a kind of moving in towards the body. You wouldn't feel yourself disappear. You may feel very odd. What I'm guessing is you would feel it like a moving inwards. And then as the interoceptive senses shut down, I mean, it doesn't really make any sense to think of it in terms of shutting down, but as a kind of thought experiment, as those things kind of shut down, so there stop being any notional connection to an awareness of breathing, or to any kind of awareness of heart rate, or any kind of awareness to the internal milieu more generally. I'm guessing that would just feel like a gradual dissociation, a gradual depersonalization, until eventually there was no there, sort of, nobody was at home. But it would feel like, I think, still feel like a retreat into an interior state, and then the gradual withering away of that interior state. If it happened in the opposite direction, I think it would be a very different kind of experience, actually. I'm not even sure I can imagine this, but if we can kind of imagine that all sense of the interior of one's being kind of disappeared. Actually, I have to come back to that bit because there's something I'm missing there, isn't it? But, if you kind of lost touch with the interior of your body through, not being able to hear your heartbeat, not being able to hear your breathing, not being able to sense the movements of the internal parts of the body, maybe proprioception will go at this point, and then taste, and then smell, then touch, then hearing, and until vision was the last to go. I suspect, if you could quell the panic, and I'm sure it would arise, I suspect that would feel like a gradual moving out, a gradual depersonalization, and a gradual expansion, if you like. Maybe. I think you'd become seeing, as Ruby says. But that's probably a positive spin on what would probably be a horrific experience. The thing I think I was missing that I said I'd come back to is, I'm just reminded again of this thing that Metzinger talks about in Being No One, where he talks about the core sense of oneself as not being a kind of conscious. Well, he says that the core sense of oneself is anchored to the core bodily processes, which are probably biochemical or something like that, and the kind of cognitive equivalence of those bodily processes, or those core processes would include core cognitive processes. And what Metzinger says is that those cognitive and physical functions form the core self, and are absolutely necessary for bodily maintenance. So you couldn't really detract from those, I guess. There's no way of contacting those consciously anyway. You can't bring those processes to awareness. So they're already, you feel like we're already detached from them. I don't really know what the implications of detaching those would be.